Walk into an American home in 1955. The address doesn't matter. It could be Levittown, New York, or Lakewood, California, or any one of the 1,000 new subdivisions that absorbed the returning men and the babies they made when they came back. The rooms smell like cigarette smoke and pot roast and something faintly chemical, the wax on the linoleum or the new synthetic carpet. The television is the size of a small credenza. The telephone has a round dial. Outside, in the pre-dawn dark, a truck moves slowly down the street with glass bottles rattling in its cargo. This was a house stocked with things that no longer exist. Not antiques, not yet, just the furniture of daily life. A full set of encyclopedias on the shelf. A metal tray making ice with a lever. A half-finished Jell-O mold in the refrigerator, waiting to set. Most of what defined that house was replaced or outpaced by something cheaper or faster. What follows is what it held and what the trade cost. Before 1949, getting ice out of a metal freezer tray meant running warm water over it, smacking it against the sink, or twisting it until something cracked. A General Electric engineer named Edward Roberts solved that problem with a lever. His patent let you pull a single handle and hear the ice separate cleanly from the metal. By the 1950s, these trays were standard in any home with a freezer compartment. Plastic trays arrived in the 1970s. The originals are on eBay now. They still work. In the 1950s, one of the most fashionable dishes at an American dinner party was a molded ring of lime gelatin containing canned fish, grated onion, and cream cheese. The hostess called it a salad. Frank Woodward had purchased the Jell-O recipe in 1899 for $450. In 1950, the Journal of Marketing found that women who used instant coffee over drip coffee were labeled by other women as lazy, disorganized, a spendthrift, and a bad wife. The Jell-O mold navigated that judgment differently. Fast to assemble, but elaborate to look at, it gave a generation of housewives a form of domestic expression the culture actually sanctioned. The savory varieties were discontinued by the mid-1970s. It survives in the rural upper Midwest and in Utah, where it was declared the official state snack in 2001. In the fall of 1952, the Swanson Company found itself with 260 tons of leftover Thanksgiving turkey. A salesman named Jerry Thomas had recently visited a Pan American Airways commissary in Pittsburgh, where he noticed partitioned aluminum trays being used to serve warm meals on flights. The technical problem fell to a Swanson bacteriologist named Betty Cronin, how to heat meat, starch, and vegetables in the same tray without undercooking the protein or destroying the peas. She solved it. The first Swanson TV dinner appeared in 1953, turkey, cornbread stuffing, sweet potatoes, and peas, $1.09. In 1954, Swanson sold 10 million of them. In 1986, the microwave-safe plastic tray arrived, and the aluminum original was retired. The columnist Frederick C. Othman had already rendered his verdict. Eating off a tray in the dusk before a TV set, he wrote in 1957, is an abomination. In the 1950s and 60s, 90% of encyclopedia sales in the United States were made door-to-door. Elkan Harrison Powell, a former Sears executive, had built the Encyclopedia Britannica's national sales force in the 1930s, trained men who arrived at front doors with a sample volume and a payment plan calibrated to parental anxiety. One writer, who grew up in rural Georgia, recalled it plainly. No salesman ever came to their door. The families there could not afford the sets, and the salesman knew it. The only encyclopedias that writers saw as a child were at the schoolhouse. Microsoft launched Encarta on CD-ROM in 1993. In 2012, after 244 years, the Encyclopedia Britannica printed its last edition. The Federal Trade Commission had issued Britannica a cease and desist order in 1961. One proposed ruling would have required each salesman to co-sign a card with the customer reading, "I agree to permit this salesman to enter my home, understanding that his purpose is to persuade me to acquire a set of encyclopedias." In 1946, R.J. Reynolds mailed free cartons of Camel cigarettes to doctors across the country, then asked what brand they smoked. The answer became a national advertising slogan: more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. By 1963, the average American adult smoked 4,345 cigarettes a year. More than 40% of the population smoked. The ashtray was not a curiosity, it was furniture, as expected in a living room as a lamp. The Surgeon General's report in 1964 established the causal link between smoking and lung cancer, which the tobacco industry had spent years contesting. The living room ashtray was not mourned. What it held should not have been there. In 1958, Magnavox advertised a piece of living room furniture as the finest, most revolutionary, high-fidelity stereophonic instrument ever created. It started at $1,000 and played records. The stereo console, wooden cabinets housing a record player, amplifier, speakers, and radio tuner in a single unit assumed that music listening was a shared activity in a shared space. One Motorola advertisement noted that its console matched perfectly all the fine furniture pieces in Drexel's declaration grouping. By the 1980s, component systems had replaced them, followed by portable radios, then the Walkman, then the earbud. Music became private. The room it had once organized no longer needed to be arranged around it. David Sarnoff arrived in America from Russia in 1900 at the age of 9. 50 years later, the company he led sold 7.4 million television sets in a single year and employed 54,000 people. At the 1939 World's Fair, he called television a torch of hope in a troubled world. The television those employees built was a console, furniture designed to anchor the room, not lean against a wall. Color sets cost over $1,000 in the mid-50s. By the 1970s, Japanese manufacturers had taken most of RCA's market share. The company was purchased by General Electric in 1986 and broken apart. What Sarnoff built was replaced by a flat rectangle one person could carry and hang on a wall. In 1950, 75% of Bell System residential customers shared their telephone line with at least one other household. Each household listened for its own ring sequence and learned in time to recognize its neighbors. When Richard Titus moved his family to a house in Dunwoody, Georgia in 1950, the line came with 4 households already on it. Later, their service improved to 2 parties, and the second party happened to be a friend. Picking up the receiver while another household was in conversation gave you full access to that conversation. Between 1988 and 2000, most major telephone companies eliminated party lines. In December of 1942, the University of Tennessee's game strategy against Ole Miss was relayed to the opposing coaching staff when a bench telephone had been accidentally wired into the same party line. The rotary telephone became possible because of a Kansas City undertaker named Almon Brown Strauger, who patented an automatic switching system in 1891 after concluding that the local operator, his competitor's wife, was routing his business calls elsewhere. He sold his patent in 1896 for $1,800. It was resold in 1916 for $2.5 million. When the dial phone arrived in the U.S. Senate in the late 1920s, Virginia Senator Carter Glass introduced a resolution to remove the devices within 30 days. President Hoover had already banned dial phones from the White House in 1929. By the mid-1950s, two-thirds of American households had at least one telephone. When touch tone service became available in 1963, the phone company charged an additional monthly fee, which kept rotary phones in homes well into the 1970s, not from sentiment, but from economics. In 2019, a father named Kevin Bumstead challenged two 17-year-olds to dial a number on a rotary phone in under 4 minutes. The video was watched more than 20 million times. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, in the 1950s, more than half of all consumer milk sales came through home delivery. The milkman came before sunrise, placed the bottles on the porch, collected the empties, and took the payment left out the night before. On average, a glass bottle made 22 round trips before it broke or went missing. By the early 1960s, 30% of milk was still home delivered. By the mid-70s, 7%. By 2005, 0.4%. Refrigerators became standard. Supermarkets expanded, suburbs stretched delivery routes, and the family car made a weekly grocery run the obvious choice. The orders are placed online now. The delivery man does not know whether the bottles were left out. The 1955 house we walked through is still standing somewhere, renovated and resold. The encyclopedia set went to Goodwill in the 90s. The console stereo sat in the garage until it became too heavy to move. The aluminum ice tray is in a kitchen drawer in Ohio, still functional, largely forgotten. What replaced all of it was faster and cheaper, and most of those trades were rational by any measurable standard. What that household was doing, inefficiently by modern terms, was conducting daily life through arrangements that required other people. The milkman who knew your address. Richard Titus's neighbors whose voices came through the shared line. Betty Cronin solving a problem in a test kitchen in Omaha so a family in New Jersey could eat turkey for 69 cents. The encyclopedia salesman came to the door. The rural family in Georgia never saw him. There was no announcement when those arrangements ended, no last day anyone chose to mark. The bottles stopped coming. The dial went still. The lever stopped cracking the ice. That is generally how these things go.